On the agenda tonight, we're going to be taking a look at somebody that I used to know under the microscope to see if Gotye used auto-tune and or pitch correction. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we had a look at this song recently on the channel, as well as looking at Meryl Streep at the same time and some auto-tune goings on. But with this particular song, what I looked at initially was a quick video, and I'm sure you guys have seen my video, where they were saying that auto-tune was being used on this song, and they had a clip where it obviously wasn't being used, and I ran it through pitch monitoring software so that we could see the auto-tune wasn't being used. So with the comments section, and it's always interesting to go through the comments as I always do, some people were saying about this song definitely being auto-tuned and that 80% of people think it's auto-tuned, and somebody broke down some stats for me. So I thought, well, rather than just a 5-second clip, why don't we jump into this in detail? So just to give you fair warning, this isn't the video for you if you want to listen to the song the whole way through, because we are going to be jumping into this a lot, and I have isolated the vocal, run it through the pitch monitoring software. So to listen to the song, there's a link in the description below as always. But let's jump into the first verse and have a listen.
Now and then I think of when we were together.
So you'll see on the left hand side that we've just got a still image as well. I paused the video because we don't want to be distracted from what's going on the right hand side. So the first thing to mention is that I've changed the frequency of the pitch monitoring software so that it's tuned to 436 Hertz. Normally it's set to 440 Hertz, and that's where the mainstream music industry snap all of the values for auto-tune, because 440 Hertz tuning is standard, and it has been standard from the late 50s, I believe. But when listening to this song, you can tell that something is slightly off, and it's ever so slightly flat. So it means that looking at these lines on screen, they'd be between the lines. So I did a bit of calibration to try and get it to where I thought the tuning was, and I set that at 436 Hertz. Now, just to explain about tuning and Hertz, if you don't know what I'm on about, these lines, when they're set to 440 Hertz, they'll be a little bit higher up. So it means that the yellow lines will be in between the lines. But if you imagine, because the pitch that's been sung, and the yellow lines here, that never moves because it's the pitch that was sung. But what I've done is move these down in frequency to 436, and in layman's terms, frequency, the lower you go, the lower the note is. The higher you go, the higher the note is. And if you keep on going higher and higher and higher, we can't hear it anymore, but then dogs can. So those are the lines on screen. I've brought it down so that now the vocals look like they're closer to lines, but we'll have a listen on because I want to explain something else. But you can see already here on this D3 that we're slightly flat. Let's have a listen on.
Like when you said you felt so happy you could die.
And we were flat there again of the A3. And at this point I thought maybe I haven't calibrated it quite right. Maybe it's a little bit lower than 436 Hertz, but I stuck with it. So what we're going to be looking at is just the way that these vocals look. To me, definitely not auto-tuned, because that'd just be a straight line. And to my ear, because this is such a stripped back vocal, I don't think this has even been pitch corrected. I mean, we know that Gotye's live vocal is great. He's really accurate pitch-wise. So this is, for me, just him standing in front of a mic and singing and telling the story of the song. If he did start to manipulate this, even with pitch correction, you would hear the processing sound that goes on with that. It's really difficult to hide. So this kind of thing you wouldn't see, and it would be really easy to correct this, to grab it and move it closer to the line. But let's listen on.
Told myself that you were right for me, but felt so lonely in your company. But that was love and it's an ache I still remember.
So here, now with the D3, you could say that was a tiny bit, I don't know, processed, or it sounded more processed. And we can see that we're exactly on the D3, but because everything else has been slightly flat, and if we go back, you can see that this hasn't been affected by any processing. Even here with the G3, we've actually ascended through the note and then ended up sharp, which is something that, yeah, if you were pitch correcting this, you wouldn't really let anything be flat of the note. If you were trying to get all of your notes now as accurate as possible, you wouldn't let them be flat. So this is why I think on this particular vocal, he hasn't corrected it, pitch corrected it, auto-tuned it. He's just this accurate in front of the microphone.
You can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness.
And the other argument for it not being pitch corrected is that if he's flat, and if my calibration was off, he would always be flat of the note. But here, he's bang on, and with the D3, he's bang on. So it starts to give you an appreciation of how freeform this vocal is, that sometimes we're on the line and other times we are flat. So it's like a living, breathing thing. It isn't set to a line. He's just hitting the notes that are most accurate to his ear, and I'm going to explain that in more detail later on, but let's listen.
Like resignation to the end, always the end.
Again, flat here with this A3. If he was pitch correcting, he'd definitely have moved that up.
So when we found that we could not make sense, well, you said that we would still be friends. But I'll admit that I was glad it was over.
With these examples where we're directly over the line, of which there haven't been many, you know, he's got the ability to do this anyway, and we've seen that live, and I've seen it live. If you start processing the vocals too much, especially with something like this that is so stripped back, you can notice it, and most importantly, it takes away the expression of the vocal. And the reason that this is so popular, and we've been watched, you know, over 1 billion times on YouTube and won so many awards, is because of the connection with the audience that listen to this. There's something about this vocal that you just lock into, and obviously the lyrical content of the song, the production is great as well. It's minimalistic, but when you listen to it, there is actually a lot going on, so it's just been perfectly mixed. But this is the point, that you can focus on the emotion of the vocal because it isn't overly processed, but it isn't really processed at all at this point. It's interesting to see on the screen as well how flat actually we were here of the C4. We're in between notes. So again, that is something that would have definitely been corrected because it's literally as far away from either note as it's possible to be. And by being slightly flat, it means that the vocal isn't excitable in the way that it sounds, and that's what tends to happen when you're sharp of the note. So we've got this solemn sound to the vocal, which is obviously where all of the expression and the personality is because of the way it's being delivered. But let's listen on into the chorus.
You didn't have to cut me off, make out like it never happened, and that we were nothing.
So now we've got a different vocal sound. It's not as personal with the microphone. It doesn't sound as personal as the verse. And I think what we've got going on here is a double-tracked vocal, but the second take of the vocal, and when I say double-tracked, I mean that he sung the chorus twice and put those two takes together, but one of the takes is really low in the mix. It's ever so slightly in there in order to give it this different sound, to set it apart from the verse. And obviously we've got the backing vocals that come in as well, which really fill out the sound, but it's obviously different, but still I don't think this is pitch corrected. It's just two voices next to each other, and you can see that we're flat anyway. So, you know, right here at the end with the F4, he's bang on there, but these notes have been allowed to just drift flat.
I don't even need your love, but you treat me like a stranger, and that feels so rough.
And again, flat, flat, flat at the end of that chorus, or the chorus line.
No, you didn't have to stoop so low.
I mean, there are so many notes that are flat. You think, well, maybe it has been pitch corrected and the lines should be just a little bit lower. But I'm just going to run it forward a little bit because we're going to wait to see when Kimbra's vocal comes in.
Now and then I think of all the times you screwed me over, but in me believing it was always something that I'd done.
And now we have something that is obviously different to the verse that we've already heard, because Kimbra's vocal, you can see in parts, are stuck to these lines. And I didn't think that I could like the song anymore, but it seems like I can, because this is, to my ears, an artistic use of auto-tune and pitch correction. It might be just intentionally pitch corrected because of the fact that we actually go down through this G4. It's like it's been moved to the note, but you've still kept the expression in there. So it's setting the vocal apart from the male vocal that we've just heard. The female vocal, when it comes in, sounds more robotic. And yeah, for me, that is absolutely an artistic use of auto-tune and or pitch correction. It's great because it reinforces my ear that I thought that this was in and around 436 Hz tuning. Now that we can hear this more processed sound and it's gone through pitch correction, I'm going to say, but you could say this is auto-tune because it is so stuck to the lines. Because it's stuck to the lines, at least it means that my ears are working, that this is 436 Hz, that it's been snapped to in the studio just for Kimbra's vocal. But I'm just going to move it on a little bit and we'll listen on. And by the way, this proves it again, because this wasn't a vocal, this was an instrument that has hit the A4. So that instrument is tuned to 436 Hz tuning.
I don't wanna live that way.
And again, this just backs it up even more. The F4 absolutely squashed on that line.
Reading into every word you say. You said that you could let it go, and I wouldn't catch you hung up on somebody that you used to know.
You didn't have to cut.
So, when we're looking at these vocal lines, we can see that there's been a definite change in what's been pitch corrected and what hasn't. And even here, you know, coming down a little bit sharp, and then we just come down through the note. So it hasn't been absolutely butchered, and we're actually a little bit sharp here. So it's not auto-tuned, but I think Kimbra's vocal is intentionally pitch corrected to get it to sound different, to sound processed, because it's the other voice in the story, or at least, you know, telling the story. She's telling the other side. I don't want this video to go on for too long, but when I say about this being an artistic use of correcting pitch, whether that be auto-tune or pitch correction, when we think about it in those terms, think of it in relation to the song. The male vocal is telling the story about effectively being treated in a really cold-hearted way by the other person, the female vocalist, so therefore potentially not having a heart, being more robotic, not having feelings. That's how he sees the relationship now after it's fallen apart, and the steps that have been taken by the female vocalist from his point of view. And because we start the song from his point of view, having a robotic sound to the female vocalist is just great. I mean, that's when I say about liking the song even more, because when you see that the male vocal is natural and true and not edited, the female vocal, whatever she's saying, isn't true. You know, it's been manipulated. It's not how he sees it. So I know that I'm looking at things in depth, but for me, that's exactly what this is about. A great example of an artistic use of correcting pitch to make it sound robotic to serve the purpose of the song and to serve the narrative of the song. And listen to those backing vocals, because now we've got what sounds like more of an auto-tuned backing vocal. It's almost like a talk box, like playing a keyboard with a tube in your mouth, or playing guitar. If you've seen a guitarist such as Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi playing with the tube in his mouth, that's what I'm talking about. So you're getting a note that is being played effectively by an instrument, either a keyboard or a guitar, and that note for guitar is then blown into your mouth, and then the sound comes out of your mouth into the microphone. So that's how that works. So it means that an instrument is making that sound, and again, just to back up the tuning, dead on the C4 there. Let's have a listen.
I need your love, but you treat me like a stranger, and I feel so rough.
And again here, na, 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 na. That C4 was flat. So again, it backs up the theory of just using pitch correction on backing vocals and having Kimbra's vocal being slightly set apart. But if you'd wanted to do the whole song and think, right, I'm going to get my vocals on all of these lines to be as accurate as possible, why not correct your vocal that happened in the chorus if you were trying to pretend or cheat, and hit the notes that you couldn't hit in the studio? So I just want to explore something that I said I would talk about earlier in this video about Gotye's vocal being flat of the note, because now we know that this is at 436 Hz tuning. So he hasn't pitch corrected it, he hasn't auto-tuned it, but why is he always singing flat when he's got great pitch? And more importantly, why, when people listen to this song, do they think it's auto-tuned, and do they think that Gotye's vocal is pitch corrected? And I'm just about to give you the answer as to why people can't place this. Let's have a listen to this verse leading into the chorus. Now, if you've got a sensitive ear, you would have picked that up, but most of you probably wouldn't, because the guitar is sharper than the bass. The bass is flat, so it means that we've got two notes going on here from the guitar, which is a higher note. And when I'm saying a higher note, they're not different notes. We're talking about something called microtones, which is an ever so slightly different pitch, so that you can have two notes that, these lines, say for example, we're looking at the F4 here, this line is 0. But when you start adding, and the distance between these lines is 100 cents. That's how it works. So when you've got a note that's dead on the line, that's at 0. If you're ever so slightly sharp, like the guitar is, that'll be maybe 3 cents sharp. The bass is flat, maybe 3 cents flat. So when listening to this in the studio, Gotye is singing the vocal that's in between these instruments, because they're different. They're both out of tune either side of the line. So it means that because bass frequencies travel a lot more noticeably than guitar frequencies, and the voice is complicated, but it sits higher. Bass frequencies are omnidirectional. They go everywhere. So you hear them no matter what. And it's why when you go to a gig, more often than not, all you can hear is the bass and the foot pedal of the band, because that's traveling to you, whereas everything else is getting absorbed by the people. But anyway, it means that Gotye is singing probably to the bass, but the guitar is sharp. So if the bass is flat of the note, he's ever so slightly flat of the note as well. And because we focus on bass more, this is why it sounds great. And by the way, why your rhythm section is absolutely essential you know, to be at the top level if you're going to be a great live band, but just a great band in general, because that bassist and the drummer, the foot pedal and the bass are going to get through to everybody, whereas you can afford to be a little bit sharp with your guitar because it can fly under the radar a bit more. Gotye is singing the perfect note that is the median between the guitar and the bass, but all the other instruments, and I guarantee you all of the other instruments that are going on are not perfectly tuned to 436 hertz tuning. So we get this kind of thing all the time where he's not on the lines, and this one where he's between the notes. At no point listening to this song do you listen to this and think, oh, he's flat all the time. It's the opposite. People think it's auto-tuned and pitch corrected because they can't understand why it sounds so perfect. It's perfect because he's hitting exactly where he needs to according to the sound and the frequencies that are going on and being created by the instrumentation in the background. Anyway, thank you guys for requesting a follow-up on this video and a follow-up to that previous video. Keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below. As always, let me know what you guys think. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!